Okay, great. And Heather, can you confirm that you can hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine, thanks.
Great. Well, welcome everybody. Glad you're attending this Meaning Matters webinar sponsored by Access Innovations. You don't need to be big to do big things. This is one that I think is going to be really interesting and potentially really helpful to a lot of the folks on this call. You know, a lot of people think that dealing with semantics and taxonomies, et cetera, is a big deal. Well, that's true. It is a big deal. But they also confuse that with it can only be done if you're a really big organization. A small organization doesn't have the resources to do that. And that's why I'm so excited about this particular presentation, because it's a really excellent example of really a small group of people dealing with a really challenging situation, the merger of two separate organizations that have their own back file of content and their own existing kind of ways of thinking and talking about their content. And how did they make that all unified, et cetera, after they merged? So, and it was done by, I will have to say, a shockingly small team of people led by Mandy May. She is the Director of Content Management at AMPP. And as her intro slide says here, having worked in the association world for more than 30 years, has provided Mandy with opportunities to see many aspects of this work, from standards to publications to IT to marketing. And having the privilege to work on SAE's content management effort instilled her passion for this work by seeing what it brings to an organization. And then having the chance to bring this methodology to AMPP, the Association for Materials Protection and Performance, at a time when NACE and SSPC merged, has been her once-in-a-lifetime career opportunity. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing and hand it back over to Mandy.
Thank you very much, Bill. And if you could confirm that, number one, you can hear me.
Yep, can hear you just fine.
Number two, that you see my screen.
Looks perfect.
And you see it in the full presentation mode, because it isn't showing that way.
It is. We're seeing what we're supposed to see.
All right, perfect. Thank you so very much, Bill, and thank you for the great introduction. And thank you for inviting me today. I am thrilled to be presenting our journey of content management at AMP. And as Bill mentioned, it was that privilege of working on the ground level startup of a content management initiative at SAE, where I really learned to love and appreciate what content management can bring to an organization for the short term, but also for the very long term too. It is where I found my work passion, and it really is a privilege to be leading this initiative at AMP.
Mandy, if I could interrupt, I forgot to say two important things. One is,
absolutely.
If you've got questions, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. That's where we accumulate the questions, and we will address those questions, saving time for that at the end of the webinar. But if we don't get time to answer all the questions, that is, if Mandy doesn't get time to answer all the questions, we will get back to you via email, because we'll have a record of your question. So that's, don't use the chat for that, use the Q&A. So absolutely. Back to you, Mandy. Great. Sorry, I forgot to mention that.
No, great point, Bill. And I'm always open for questions now or after the webinar. I wanted to start with a little bit about our association. We have 9 offices, 4 community offices, and 3 career development centers. We truly are a global organization, and getting more and more global with each passing day. This is an AMP by the numbers chart. Not all the numbers. There's a lot of content numbers that are not represented here, but this slide does highlight some of the statistics for our organization, which focuses on all things related to corrosion, coatings, and materials. I always use these next 2 slides in any presentation. I always like to level set the definition of content management in the context of the presentation, because these words can very appropriately mean different things, very different things to different people. And as a further clarification, I'll probably use the collective noun of members throughout the presentation, but when I refer to members, I mean members, non-members, really all of our content consumers. And for associations, content is very often defined as the knowledge resources for our members, things like conference papers, standards, articles from magazines, journals, newsletters, technical manuals, books, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then for those that associations that are science and technology based, content is what archives the foundation of the fundamental technologies that are relative to our industries. It also introduces and documents new emerging technologies and really everything that comes in between those two bullets. And then there's the management aspect, and this is my own definition, at least I think it's my own definition. It's the reproducible methodology used to store, categorize, discover, and publish content. This work is particularly important in an association because, number one, it enables discoverability of content for our members and provides them with what they need. It stewards the content for the legacy of the organization and the industries that we represent. And it also delivers the content in the manner which best serves the member, adding the necessary features and functionality to that content. Which, when you think of it, at the end of the day, these are really the primary reasons why an association is so important to the people that we are serving. And achieving all of this only comes with a very purposeful content management strategy. So what are those elements of our own AMP content management strategy? Overall, it meant treating our content holistically for the first time as a large collective resource library. While we do have internal categorization of content into types, books, standards, articles, often that's defining our internal business units. And most often these categories mean little or nothing to our members. They want everything that we have on a particular topic. And the categorization of that content is sometimes secondary and sometimes really inconsequential. Some of the other elements to our strategy include XML conversion, taking our static PDF files and converting them to XML data that provides the most wide open number of future opportunities for the content. Taxonomy, using that proven science of creating an accurate list of index terms and then programmatically assigning those terms to all the content units that we want to make discoverable. We want users to come and to find what they're looking for based on a particular topic and then be extremely surprised when they see all of the additional material that we're able to offer on that topic that they are interested in. Another element is a true content repository, using a technology application that's built specifically for maintaining content. These databases have very specific features, and I will tell you that since September of 2022, I've been struggling with aggregating the organization's content and storing it, even albeit temporarily, on OneDrive, only to have sync issue after sync issue after sync issue. Actually, it was just come to a resolution today. I'm on a server. So please know that for me, for our purposes and my experience, OneDrive and SharePoint are definitely not content repositories. Centralized publishing with automated workflows is an important element of our strategy. We do want our content creators to sit down and get their ideas into a document, not have to worry about formatting, not have to worry about versioning of files. We want to be able to leverage automation, notification, and predetermined templates. We also want to solidify an overall AMP brand. The AMP brand is new, and that is much more easily achievable if content is produced in a shared application with shared content templates. And then lastly, the reason that we're doing all of this, we want to create that user-facing platform that's going to solve the user's needs with a solution that gets them to the content they need. So all of what you've heard there is pretty typical story of a content management initiative at an association. There's really nothing special about this story until I present a variable. Actually, I have two variables today that I'd like to share. When this initiative started, it was in 2019, and it started, as Bill mentioned, with NACE International. It was an organization that had content everywhere, not in a comprehensive library, either physically or digitally. And the effort began with a consultant who came in and assessed the association's needs and made some recommendations on how to move forward to bring the content together, taking NACE from a content in the moment situation, papers that were just for a particular conference, magazine articles that were just for that magazine issue or for that website, to more of a building a knowledge-based vision. And I was tasked with taking on that effort in the summer of 2020 with the breadth of NACE content. I was ready and I was good to go. Then in January of 2021, NACE, which has a corrosion focus, merged with SSPC, the Society for Protective Coatings, to form AMP. Both organizations have a very rich legacy of content, and a focus of the merger was to bring a purposeful union of both organizations' decades of content, and I mean decades, and then publishing new content going forward. So all of those things that come with content management efforts that involve legacy content, things like digging in file cabinets, reconciling Excel spreadsheets with sometimes 20,000 rows and reconciling it sometimes more than once, putting together hard copies of old magazine issues so that they could be scanned. Lots of time spent in dusty warehouses, an extreme amount of effort and hours that was spent used to standardize metadata. So all of that became that ×2 for us. I have been extremely fortunate. NACE's commitment turned into AMP's commitment to this effort. And the organization has taken a very holistic, genuine approach, wanting to build that true digital library from both legacy organizations' content, including what had been previously available, but also adding a significant amount of content that before the effort would have been only in hard copy or existed only as a very bad scan. So not only did we have commitment from leadership, and that was internally staff-wise and also on the member side, but we had commitment and support from all across the organization, particularly from our product owners. And the user experience. The user experience is, in engaging with our content, is the very first filter of everything that we are doing. The end result for us has to be that our community is able to get to the solutions to their problems by having the ability to obtain the right kind of content. So the title of the talk is Not Needing to Be Big to Do Big Things. And as you've heard, our directive was not small, but our internal team is very small. In addition to myself, I have one full-time employee and then a part-time employee who's working for us less than 10 hours a week. I do want to add that I do have great news. We've just posted for one additional person, so I'm very excited about that. But with such a small team, we knew that we really needed to leverage the ultimate in service providers. And we spent many months and lots of vetting, and that led us to an XML conversion vendor, Data Conversion Labs, DCL, a repository and a publishing platform vendor in X-Publisher, and they will be serving AMP for the long term. They have huge scalability, and they are going to grow as we're able to grow in our initiative. our taxonomy service provider, Access Innovations, and then a longtime partner, Ariza Content Solutions. So I'd like to spend the next few slides on the impact of the merger and our small staff status has had on each of these initiatives components. For our conversion, we needed a provider who, and this is quite the list. Number one was expert in association content and also had a very high accuracy conversion rate. Our team of 2.5 could not spend hours and hours and hours doing a huge QA on a huge sampling of content. We did our due diligence using, the trust yet verify methodology, and then we were led to have complete confidence in the conversion vendor's work. We needed someone who could guide us in conversion specs that were association specific, but weren't so customized that we wouldn't be able to leverage the full offering that XML can provide. We required the long-term consideration of our XML. Ultimately, we knew it was going to be used to populate a user-facing platform, but that vendor has yet to be determined. It was also necessary for someone to work with us as we established some brand new naming conventions for our product codes. We wanted to bring together the NACE and SSPC into AMP, and those codes needed to be unique and they needed to be reflective of the original publisher, and they needed to carry over into all of the places where you find those product codes in an XML package. And we needed flexibility, as we uncovered various merger-specific considerations. For example, we needed to tag the original copyright language that was on our content. We needed to tag the new copyright language. We needed to tag the original publisher. We needed to tag the current copyright owner. And then DCL took it one step further for us, and we provided them with a complex matrix. It was if this, then that logic that helped them as they were converting the technical papers. They were able to capture the copyright type for each paper. Either it was AMP, a government, or a license to publish arrangement. And they capture that as the conversion happened. So as you can imagine, none of this could have been done by our small internal team of 2.5. We really needed the right partner in DCL. Our content repository also had some really specific needs. It needed to hold decades of content from 2 organizations. It needed to provide lots of discoverability in a multitude of ways, including by the original publisher. And our production platform needed to be as automated as possible. With such a small team supporting all of our content product areas, it wouldn't be possible for us to manually accommodate any of this. X-Publisher provided the perfect solution with a very highly organized, metadata-rich content repository, as well as workflows that not only will be automated with the accompanying notifications with our internal content management team and our product owners, but also with our other vendors. X-Publisher created streamlined integrations with DCL and Access Innovations so that, for example, as technical papers are accepted for publication, they will be exported from our internal peer review system, and then the automation begins. They will be picked up by X-Publisher, and content records will be created in the application. They'll be sent to DCL. They'll be accepted back into X-Publisher after conversion, and the appropriate metadata values will be written over. Things like title, abstract, those things that get updated when an author submits his paper. They will then be sent to Access Innovations for taxonomy term assignment, accepted back into X-Publisher, and then pushed into a style sheet for final layout. And really, until that layout is ready to be worked on and finalized, it's almost entirely hands-off by our small team. And X-Publisher is building that same smart automation for our other content types. So selecting a taxonomy provider rather than internally implementing your own taxonomy application in-house is really in and of itself an advantage for a tremendous amount of reasons. And it's a must-have if you have a small team that is trying to incorporate taxonomy into the initiative. Accommodating our merged content in an organizational taxonomy is where Access really filled the gap for us. At the start of our partnership, we were just recently merged, which of course meant merging of staff, merging of members. We were diligent about providing Access with representative content from both organizations for them to create our initial thesaurus. And the next required step was a review of the taxonomy by subject matter experts. We elected to do this in 2 phases. We wanted to do a staff review and then a member review. We wanted to do the bulk of the review internally in order to minimize the time that our members needed to dedicate to that activity. So at the time the review began, as I said, we were fairly fresh in the merger, and looking back, our thesaurus more than slightly represented some of those legacy nuances when we really needed an organizational term list. The review did advance to the member SME level and made it through 1 round, and then there was an awareness that a more AMP-centric, not legacy NACE, legacy SSPC thesaurus was possible. So Access performed a top-level term adjustment, and then all of the trickle-down impact that a top-level term adjustment will give to accommodate this advancement. And this was only through the merger becoming more and more solidified that we could get to this point. And all the while, even with this significant adjustment, Access staff was a true partner, fully supporting this significant change. So through any journey of this magnitude, you need a trusted partner, particularly when there are extenuating circumstances, such as a merger and a small team. Ariza Content Solutions has been that continual trusted partner for us. Brian Trombley and Ed Zeitz, they were with DCL at the time. They were part of that 2019 consultant review for NACE that I mentioned. So they've been with us for the long haul. They were part of the team before I was part of the team. And it is a rarity to have such a long-term partner that has such a deep understanding and knowledge of association content, and in our case, specifically our content, in addition to the exact subject matter expertise that will be required to see us through all phases of our implementation. Ariza has assumed the lead role with AMP and X-Publisher and Discovery. They're project managing the AMP, Ariza, X-Publisher relationship. They're leading in testing, training, documentation, and most importantly, in style sheet development and InDesign template creation. Something that really has to be done in the most effective way for our small team to be able to efficiently and effectively leverage our true XML-based publishing effort. So where are we now? We have almost all of our technical paper content converted. It'll be about 22,000 units total, including the most recent 2023 papers. But as we continue to uncover additional pockets of more papers. All units of our paper XML packages are being redelivered in a new zip structure so that they can be easily ingested into our X-Publisher content repository. We're hoping that for our thesaurus, we just need that final affirmation. That's the hope. Our technical paper workflow is through user acceptance testing, and it's scheduled for a late fall go live for preparation for AMP 2024 event. Our book and standards workflows are in development. We completed a very large legacy magazine scan project, and finally, we are currently in active planning for the user-facing platform of our initiative. When I began working on this initiative, I have a very wise long-term mentor, and they recommended that I document what's my North Star for this work at AMP. And for me to continually filter everything through it, to continually have the focus on the goal that we want to attain. And the content management goal is really central to the mission of AMP in its entirety. That's providing a mechanism for our audience to discover the content they need, have it delivered to them in the best way possible, in order for them to continue to find the solutions for the protection of materials through the advancement of corrosion control and protective coatings. And our mission is also stewardship, stewarding all of the content for the association's continuing legacy, as well as for the industries that we represent. So I would say that even with a small team and with a merger that happens in the middle, when you have true organizational vision, commitment, and involvement, and the very best of service providers, that North Star can become more visible with each and every day. I would welcome any questions, comments from those that are attending the webinar. I can't see chat or Q&A, actually.
We don't have any questions yet. I encourage attendees to please put some questions in the Q&A. But I can ask a couple of questions, Mandy. How much kind of semantic taxonomy expertise did you and your 1.5 other partners have before launching into all this?
Well, when I was at SAE, I was the production person, and I shared a wall with the taxonomy, the person that was responsible for taxonomy. So I learned a lot through the over-the-wall conversations, and recognize you can have this entire effort, but if you don't have taxonomy as part of your initiative, it's for nothing. So recognize the importance, but definitely did not have the expertise to work with a taxonomy application vendor to bring that in-house. And Access Innovations was the perfect solution, the perfect partner for us. So I knew of the importance. I knew that we needed to tackle this, and the expertise came from Access Innovations.
Great. So we do have questions now. So the first one is, how often do you review your entire taxonomy? Because obviously it's not a one and done kind of task, right?
I always say it's like laundry. It is never done, because you want to be incorporating emerging technologies into your content that will need to be represented in the taxonomy. And I wish we could say we were at that cadence of maintaining our taxonomy, but we need to get that final approval by our member SME group. But we will be determining what that cadence should be. And I know that the folks at Access Innovations will help us determine what the appropriate cadence is.
I'm going to interject a question from me before I go on to the rest of these. But so this is just a quick one. But, one of the consequences of the merger of two organizations is you've got staff from both organizations, maybe not in your particular team, but, you're dealing with people that thought of the content and the information and the resources in organization one's way, and another group thinking in organization two's way. How did you reconcile that? Do you have some kind of representation or some kind of well, I'll just ask you the open question of, how do you manage the fact that you've got people coming from two different perspectives, even though they're closely related, obviously?
We were very fortunate in the merger that our leadership in was very engaging of all staff to make sure that everybody felt part of the new organization. So yes, people were bringing with them perspectives from their home organization, but there was an agreement across the board to look forward. Part of our staff review of our taxonomy, you could see that, there were elements of our legacy organizations incorporated into that review. And it was just through time that we were able to make it more of an AMP focused taxonomy term list. And truly, the culture of wanting to move the organization forward and the expertise from both staffs and both organizations' memberships was the only way that we could move forward in the way that we wanted to.
Great.
We're
And
very
it sounds like-
fortunate for the leadership.
Sounds like it worked. Yeah.
It did. It did.
Sounds like it worked. Yeah. Okay, next question is, what were some of the content challenges? Can you give examples of, the nature of your content that was particularly challenging?
Well, we had lots of challenges, and I would go back to that slide with dusty file cabinets and lots of old file folders, and we had no collective library physically, digitally, so it was a content everywhere experience times two. So also very fortunate the organization knew that there needed to be a lot of groundwork done before we could get to launching any of these technologies. So content everywhere, lots of time spent in file folders, like I said, putting magazine issues back together again, the tear sheets that had been used over and over again. So just that content everywhere perspective.
Great. And, there's another way to look at that question, which is not in terms of where does the content live, but what's the nature of the content? So, is it full of complex math, for example, or lots of tables or foreign languages or those kinds of challenges, and then of course getting at the taxonomy, different ways of thinking and structuring. So follow-up question from that same person is such as taxonomy terms. So was there coordination with Ariza team in that process of coming to a common understanding about what to call things, how to tag them, what the nature of them would be,
that conversation came more through the access team, and it was conversations with staff and with AMP staff and with access staff, guiding us through making sure that the right terms were under the right categories, and of course that the definitions of those terms meant what they ought to, in light of incorporating two organizations' content. But those conversations happened with the access team in our member SME and staff SME review sessions.
And I'll interject another related question here, which is, then how did you socialize the results? In other words, you came up with, okay, this is what we're going to do. You've still got this constituency out there. First of all, the staff of those two organizations that just merged, but also all the members so you're talking about a lot of different organizations. Was it, at one end of the scale, this is what we're going to do, so shut up and sit down. And at the other end of the scale is get everybody to vote. I'm sure neither one of those was a workable approach. So how did you socialize this new way of looking at your content?
That's a great question, Bill. And for the whole initiative, there was a lot of pre-communication that happened. I have categorized, no surprise there, all of my presentations. And I think this is presentation number 36 in 3 years. There was a full-on effort to communicate and socialize this idea to staff. So I did many staff presentations. And then there were also several presentations to our member leaders to make sure that there was full understanding of how we were moving forward. So it was a very thoughtful approach from our executive leadership.
That's fantastic. Next question is one that I'm not sure you're going to be able to answer concretely off the top of your head. So we can obviously get an answer back to this person later. But it would be interesting if you can answer it, which is, can you provide an example of your taxonomy terms? I think it would be interesting to see kind of the level of detail, what kind of depth of structure is going on in your taxonomy.
Well, I could present some facts and figures. There's over 3,100 terms, and it's either 6 to 8 levels deep. So it is a very robust taxonomy.
That's a heck of a taxonomy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And when you remember that it is coatings, corrosion, and materials, and all of the things that go along with that, it's a very appropriate number of terms.
Yeah. And, I presume a lot of the people, but maybe not all of the people attending this webinar, know that when we're talking about a taxonomy, it's not just what term do you use for this, it's what terms are used for this, so that you've got, a preferred term, but you need to know all those synonyms and all those alternate
Also
ways.
known as, absolutely.
Is that part of your process as well? I assume, yes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great. Next question is, what technology challenges have you had? So, did you need to find expertise in query languages and taxonomy tools, anything like that was involved in what you were doing?
Well, when we started the whole initiative, we did leverage Brian Trombley and Ed Zeitz and their recommendations on technology to consider to move the entire initiative forward. So we did a very in-depth analysis of every potential technology provider that was presented to us. And then we just narrowed the field and came to the right service providers for us. And then there was also the consideration of how this technology needed to integrate with other things that the organization already had in place. So it was the selection of the tools and then the integration impact as well. But yes, we did a full vetting.
That's great. So it sounds like, a fundamental part of your answer, and it was actually part of your presentation, is that expertise, the consulting expertise that you got to work with.
Absolutely.
Seems like that was pretty essential to you. But so just to ask a very direct question that I think is related to this question is, did you have any regrets? In other words, did you say, well, this is the one we're choosing, and then when you started to implement it, you thought, wait a minute, this is not working for us, we have to shift gears here?
Absolutely not. I'm fully comfortable, confident, so very pleased with all of the selections that we made.
It sounds
Absolutely.
like you, A, had good guidance, but B, also had a very thorough process then, because that's refreshing. And I think a lot of the people attending might not assume that would be the case, because you don't always make the right call when you do those things. So I think that just thorough analysis of the possibilities was a key here.
And we were fortunate that we were building from the ground up. We weren't migrating anything. This was a fresh content management initiative. We weren't taking existing XML and trying to make it something that it wasn't. This was a very ground level startup, and we could do things the way that they were intended. So yeah, no regrets at all.
That's really good. That's really nice to hear. That's fantastic. And here's a question that in today's conversation, in today's world, is inevitable. and I happen to know the person that's asking this question, and she's extremely sharp, is do you use AI at all to guide finalizing on taxonomy terms and how the terms get put in your taxonomy? And she's specifically asking about a large language model type of tool.
I know that
Those
Access,
probably weren't kind of commonly used when you started out on this, but now they're all over the place. So I guess I'll modify that question to say, or are you considering that?
I will tell you, well, I know that Access Innovations is all about AI, but I will tell you that
That's right.
as we pursue our user-facing platform, the component of AI is built into the requirements that we are sending out for user-facing platform providers to comment on, so that we know that they're considering AI in their technology.
That's great. Yeah, so it sounds like you're taking a reasonable stance on that, rather than being panicked like too many people are nowadays, where they're just afraid of it, right? They're either thinking that it just saves the world, or they're thinking that it destroys the world, right? And not thinking about how useful these AI tools are. But again, you've got a partner like Access Innovations that's actually been into AI for a long time. This is not
we are
news.
leveraging.
Yeah,
and
this
we're
is not
leveraging
news to folks like Access Innovation. In fact, their initial is AI.
I know, right?
Their acronym is AI, which is
And-
just quite handy for them. But anyway,
and
but
I
that's
will
something
say,
I come across all the time, because it's just in all the discussion groups and everything. And I have to keep reminding people that, it wasn't just when ChatGPT hit the fan, basically, that AI became something that people were paying attention to. It's been used in various ways for years and years.
and I will say,
maybe in new
Bill,
ways now that people haven't experienced, but
and I will say, Bill, that we have leveraged our relationship with Access Innovations to learn more about AI. So thank you, Margie, for that.
it's good. That's good.
It's fun. I did want to interject, Bill, that we do have very active looking into large language models, and we've done two things recently that are not yet available to our user community. One of them is in the DH 5.0, the new web version of the software. We do have a large language model link, but we use it primarily for verification and definitional purposes. You can go to OpenAI or one of those and say, give me a taxonomy on sustainability or something, and it comes up with some actually interesting results that could be moved around. But of course, we always want to tie the taxonomy back to the actual content that it's indexing. So using large language models and generative AI, but using them for as tools to make a better whole and making the user more in control.
Yeah, seeing them as tools is really key. And it's, the term of art right now is human in the loop AI, right?
Mm-hmm. It's what we've always been.
That's so fundamental, because, you don't just let it rip and believe everything it comes up with, or assume everything it come up with is fine. But also, again, maybe this is more for you, Margie, than Mandy, but if you don't mind, Mandy, this is really an interesting topic for folks these days, is to what extent are you able to, I'm not sure I want to use the term train, because you're using pre-existing LLMs like, GPT-4 presumably, or similar ones. There's many out there. But to what extent can you focus them, let me use that term, on a known corpus of content, so that, you kind of avoid the wrong answer or the hallucination issues that people are so scared of in the AI.
Well, I guess I'm not. What we are doing is using them as tools, as I said, but there are now some LLMs available that you can use to train against your own content and keep in-house. And I think probably those are the more currently more effective and more interesting kinds of things that we'll be working with, like the MPT and Falcom and the new one that just came out from the Facebook AI lab. Those are all things that you can train against your own content instead of having to use the big ones that trained against somewhat open sources, but where there are a bunch of intellectual property concerns and so on about the information that you've got. So currently, subject to change in a moment, because the news is constantly changing, currently our direction is to use those where you can load your own content and train against it using those same algorithms.
That sounds great. And of course, you're looking at an organization like AMPP. They've got a big corpus of content and they've got it all normalized. So isn't that wonderful? It's all normalized to a particular XML model. So Mandy, back to you. It seems to me that gives you a leg up in potentially being able to implement the kinds of things Margie's talking about in an effective way and in a well-managed way, I guess is the way I'd like to think about it.
And I'll clarify, Bill, will be normalized. We're not done yet.
Okay, yeah, it's a lot of content, right?
That's
so this
right.
is an ongoing process right now.
That's right. We've done papers, we're moving on to books, and we're moving on to standards, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, normalizing, not normalized.
Okay, well, and I'm not sure to what extent you need like very granularly normalized, like it's all JATS XML or something like that. But so yeah, that'll be interesting to see. And I guess that's something that Margie and her staff will probably be looking at too, is what's the nature of that content corpus and how structured does it need to be? Because one of the things that is actually very interesting about AI is that it doesn't need the kind of structuring that other database focused kinds of tools in the past have required. That's part of its appeal. So
but you're right, Bill, pointing an AI tool at a corpus of qualified content, the results would be extremely rich and powerful.
Yeah, I know of a provider that right now the way their system works is that if you ask it a query and it doesn't have the answer in its corpus of content, it will respond with, "I don't have that answer. Sorry." Right? It won't make up an answer, and that's what people are worried, is that
I think all of them are doing that. Well, at least the ones that I just mentioned. That's true. I did want to change focus just a little bit. I wanted to tell you that I learned a lot from Mandy during the process of this implementation, because she's assembled a very interesting group of vendors, some of which I didn't know, but they've become very good partners, and we are now in the process of doing a lot of API integrations back and forth across the different platforms, and it's gone with Mandy's careful but attentive attention on the process. It's going very well.
It's the dream team, Margie, for sure.
That's really good to hear. It's such a refreshing message to the attendees here, that it's not just that your vendors and partners, that you learn from your vendors and partners, but they learn from you too. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. We also have another question that we're hoping you can answer, at least in round numbers, etc., which is the cost question. Like, well, I'll read you the exact question: is do you have any cost ranges for your project, including consulting? Any ballparks of, what kind of investment is this? That's always an important issue to folks.
It is, Bill, and it is an investment, to be sure. It's not something that I'm not sure I'm at liberty to comment on, but it definitely is an investment, but one that in many cases is a forever investment. When you consider conversion of your content, I mean, that lasts forever for your legacy content. So it isn't an investment, but one that's well worth it.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm a workflow guy, and you know, one of the missions for workflow is just get things right upstream as much as possible in your workflow. So, you know, instead of having to take a bunch of PDFs and convert them into JATS XML, start with the JATS XML and then, you know, create the PDFs from that. So I don't know where you are in that transition, but ultimately you ultimately save money in the long run. That's
Absolutely.
why I'm raising this in
Mhm.
response to this cost question is, yes, it may be an investment, but if you invest right, you actually can lower your costs at the end
Absolutely.
of the day. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
Mandy's done a good thing in that she is enriching her content, enriching that XML before building all the applications out, instead of trying to bolt them on to the end after the car's already built, trying to add something more. She's making them front and center to the long-term strategy, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's great. Well, we're getting close. We've only got about 6 or 7 minutes left, but oh, here's another comment from one of your partners, so I won't identify him, but creating new product opportunities. So is that something you can
Oh,
speak?
absolutely. Yes, that's a point I should have made, that yes, our ability to, when we have all of the content in one repository, you know, repurposing all of that content in a way that makes the most sense, you know, from a topical perspective, from a time period perspective, you know, that is, you know, there will be a lot of opportunity that we have not had in the past from either organization separately, much less collectively as the two together.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm just going to do a U-turn here because you've been so open about identifying your partners. It was Brian Trombley that asked that question.
Oh, thank
So,
you, Brian.
yeah.
He always has
Yeah,
my back and has since, you know.
let's give him the credit there. That was a very good question. The new product opportunities, you know, people don't think about that because they're so focused on what they're doing right now. But boy, if you get this right, the world just opens up to you in terms of what you can do with your content.
And that's why we're doing it, is in order to provide the user with the content they need and the way they need it. And that does, you know, evolve into product.
Yep. Okay, well, I don't see any more questions coming in, and we are only 5 minutes away from the end. So any more comments from any of the attendees? Any more final comments you want to make, Mandy, or anything from Margie that you want to wrap up with?
I'll just thank everyone for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank everybody for spending their hour with us today, and look forward to talking to you more in the future.
Yep. Stay tuned. We love doing these webinars, so you'll get emails from me in the future about when there's another one coming up. So thanks a lot. We had a real good attendance and it was a great discussion. Mandy, you just did a fantastic job of presenting this, a very complex topic, and, you know, organized and presented in a very cogent and intelligible way. So nice job. Okay, thanks a lot, everybody, and see you next time.
Bye now.